Hey, I hope you guys are having a good one. So I want to talk about a couple things. The plays coming up for this upcoming week. It is currently September 25th, 2022. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the earnings chart, and I want you guys to see something pretty interesting. So this is Earning Whisperer. I'm going to go ahead and actually make this a bit bigger for you guys. Boom. All right, sweet. Okay. So Nike has earnings coming up, and so does Bed Bath & Beyond. Now, Bed Bath & Beyond is an extreme hype stock. It is a stock that's been pumped. You guys may know Wall Street Bets. They did something similar for GME. Bed Bath & Beyond already had its pump. I think it's Steve Cohen or Ryan Cohen. One of those two people bought a lot of shares of Bed Bath & Beyond. They sold it. Bed Bath & Beyond crashed. Nike is going to be very important for us in this earnings week, especially as the economy overall. I think this has the potential to collapse our economy. And I don't want to say collapse, but drive our economy down further. Nike's really going to give us an insight on how consumer spending is going. So Nike's going to be very big. Whether it's puts or calls, it probably will beat whatever Nike's implied move is because it's going to be heavy. A lot of volume is going to come into Nike on this upcoming week. We already saw a spike in volume on Friday. I think this is definitely going to be interesting. So this is something that we have to watch out for. Now, while on the concept of earnings, I do want to talk about three main things coming into earnings plays. I want to talk about the IV pump, the IV crush, and the IV flush. Now, those are three earning strategies to make the most money you can on a stock. I'm sorry, guys. I'm very congested today. Anyways, so I do want to talk about some factors going into that. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is I want to talk about how to play earnings properly. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up a couple of images I've already had saved on my computer. First thing, when going after earnings report on a stock, we need to know how bad the implied volatility is. So, for example, I'm going to pull up this one picture, and this is a watch list stock. But if you notice, implied volatility on this stock is massive. The IV is 457%. That means the stock's implying an implied move of around 45%. Now, I could be completely wrong on that, but there's a lot of factors going to the IV, but just on the IV alone, it's expecting at least a 45% move. Whoa, I don't know why that's popping up. That is weird. Okay. So that means Bed Bath & Beyond has a lot implied move. It's expecting a bigger movement in the stock. So going off that alone, I'm going to go ahead and pull up our next image here. And I want to talk about Snap's earning. So Snap's, this was back in, I don't remember when this was, but this was a while back. Snap had earnings. The earnings were really good. So Snap opened up extremely well. Snap had earnings. It opened up, after hours or pre-market, I'm sorry. Snap had blasted off. So Snap was at $9.72. Now, if I go back, look at the implied volatility on Snap. It was crazy. The $10 call on Snap, just absolutely parabolic. Snap actually ended up going in the money, but the implied volatility on Snap was 138%. That is completely insane. So even though Snap beat, the implied volatility, implied volatility is it's already pricing in the move of a stock. So when you buy an option, it already prices in a preemptive move. So you're not actually buying the option. You're actually buying the option where it could be if the stock does move into your favor. It's very stupid in my opinion, but it does work. If there's a lot of demand, obviously the options are going to price themselves accordingly to this demand. So it's pricing in, because there's a lot more volume, it's pricing in a bigger move. Now, Snap had way more volume than what the implied move was. So obviously I still retained 100% gain, right? Now, obviously this is great. I don't never shy away from a massive movement like this, especially when Snap opened up so great and Snap had done such a surprise earnings. Because people were betting earnings to be bad on Snap, right? So people are expecting earnings to be bad. People are expecting, hey, Pinterest was bad, so obviously Snap's going to be bad. Meta was bad, so Snap's going to be bad. Well, when Snap comes out and they're like, no, Snapchat Premium actually pulled through, everyone's buying the Snap stock. It was great. The surprise factor, and that's something I want you guys to learn, is a thing called surprise factor. Surprise factor is when everyone's expecting something to happen, but then it does the opposite, right? Even the flow for Snap was more towards the put side. So this was one of the setups where if you bought puts, everything looked in your favor. It felt like free money, but it wasn't, right? Obviously, the flow was set to be bad. The options were pricing puts a lot heavier. So that is what happened with Snap. So now we know what happened with Snap. Snap earnings were great. If you swung calls on Snap earnings, you did pretty well. Now, here's the thing. I don't recommend people to swing calls on earnings day, right? If you're going to play calls or you're going to play any type of position, do it leading up to earnings. Because the implied volatility, if I bring up Bed Bath & Beyond, the implied volatility increases as you go through the day, right? So we see this IV right here, 457%, right? I don't know why, because this was when Bed Bath & Beyond was starting to pump like crazy. It was just shooting skywards. So when people are expecting something to happen with the stock, there's going to be a higher demand. There's going to be more volume in the options, right? So as we go into whatever's happening, whatever event's happening, the stock doesn't have to move, but the implied volatility will move if there's more volume. So let's put it like this. On open market, no one's buying the stock, right? But as we get closer to the end of the day, people realize, hey, let's say Bed Bath & Beyond had earnings. Hey, Bed Bath & Beyond has earnings either today, pre-market tomorrow. So Bed Bath & Beyond have earnings. I'm going to put my hat in the ring. Well, there's millions of people thinking that exact same thing. Thousands of buyers, right? So there's people, suddenly, volume starts coming in. Well, let's say the stock doesn't move because there's an equal number of buyers and sellers, but there's more volume in the contracts now. There's more people wanting to buy calls. There's more people wanting to buy puts. Well, suddenly, both puts and calls start increasing in value because what's happening is they're riding the implied move, right? So what I recommend for people when they're going into a hype stock or when they're going into, example, Nike earnings, which is going to be extremely huge coming up this week, play the implied move. I'm going to buy Nike contracts. If I think Nike's going to go up, I'm going to buy the Nike call contracts. If I think Nike's going to go down, I'm going to buy the Nike put contracts. But I'm going to swing that bitch onto the day of earnings and sell them right before market closes, or I'll sell it right before earnings hit, right? I'll sell it as soon as I can because I don't want to hold those contracts after earnings, because what's going to happen is there's going to be an IV crush, right? I'm going to ride the implied volatility. As more people want these contracts, I'm going to sell it to them, right? Whether the stock goes up and down, it doesn't matter, right? I'm going to see how this Nike opens up, right? Because I think Nike is after hours earnings. So this is a perfect example. Let me pull it up real quick. Boom. Nike earnings is after close. It's after hours, right? So on market open or even pre-market, Nike's going to open whether it's up or down. And if it's up, I'm going to buy Nike calls. And I'm going to ride the implied volatility on the way up. If it's Nike opens down, I'm going to ride puts. I'm going to buy puts on open. And I'm going to ride the implied volatility on the way down, right? And I won't necessarily buy them on open. I might buy them 3 minutes to 5 minutes after open. If you watch any of the other videos, I kind of talk about how options or prices are reset and they kind of have ranges. So they'll want to reset on open, but that's a whole different topic. I'm going to buy puts or calls on Nike near open time. And as the day goes on, as we get closer to after hours trading, the implied volatility on those contracts is going to go from 50%, 100%, 200%, 250%. I'm not doing any work. I'm letting the option Greeks and I'm letting the implied volatility do all the work for me. I don't have to look at the stock as long as I hold it until until market's about to close. Then I sell it. I get out of my position, right? Now, that is the IV pump. You're waiting for the stock to start pumping, right? You're waiting for that volume to come in. It's going to hit your contracts hard. Whether you're in puts or calls, the implied volatility is going to bring up your option, right? Now, there is a video where I do the Netflix earning, and I talk about how both the puts and the calls both go up. So I definitely recommend watching that video. Now, let's say you decide you're going to swing contracts. The implied move is good, right? You're expecting maybe the implied move on Snap, right? You think, hey, Snap is going to go a lot higher than what the options are pricing it at. There's way more volume. This isn't justified, right? You can still net a pretty cushioned gain, right? It only implied a 138% move. I was like, nah, Snap's going up. I'm going to buy calls, right? So you see how call options, and this is just a watch list option right here. So that's why you don't see the exercise things, full transparency. But I'm like, hey, nah, Snap's going to go up, right? So I see this implied volatility. Snap, I buy the contracts, I buy the call, I swing them to open. Snap opened up huge, and I still make 111% return on investment, right? Now, that is only if Snap breaks the implied move. So what happens? What would happen if the implied volatility didn't hit Snap, right? Let's say these contracts were priced normal. Well, this is where sympathy play comes in, right? People thought Snap was going to do so bad because what happened was Pinterest had bad earnings, Meta had bad earnings. So when Snap was having its earnings, everyone thought it was going to be bad. They're like, nah, like, social media is crap. Well, Snap had good earnings, and so I want to show you guys this. Boom, this is Meta. This is the same day, right? Look at the implied volatility on Meta and look at the percent gained on Meta. Same day, same shit, right? IV was 59%. People weren't expecting a movement on Meta, right? But it did move because, oh shit, Snap had good earnings. Social media is back. Meta just shit on everyone's contracts. 735% return on investment. That is an insane move. That is almost a 1,000 bagger within its own right. That is 7x your money and some change. That was crazy. Now, looking at this whole option watch list thingy, right? We see Snap calls, 9.5, the Snap 9 calls increased. Yeah, cool, 100%, 131%, right? But now we go off Snap. Meta doesn't price in the implied volatility. So now we see 312, 725, and 812. That is the sympathy play. That is how you play the implied volatility, right? That is how you play it. You're playing the pump on the way up of Nike, right? What we're going to do is we're going to play our positions right. Nike has good earnings. We're going to look for a sympathy. Okay, Nike's implied volatility is going to be ass because people are going to expect a big move. So we're going to play another stock that's sympathy to it. What stock are we playing? I don't know. Look at the fucking sectors, right? What else is in consumer spending? Let's see. Let's just think. Off the top of my head, I can think of... Fuck it, I don't know. But Nike falls under the consumer spending category. So we could think about Walmart. Oh, there's one. Walmart. We can think about exactly Walmart, Walgreens. I guess Walgreens would fall under healthcare, but I digress. We're going to look at consumer spending. It's going to be a big sector coming up, especially in the sector rotations now, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. We're going to see Snap, okay? Snap, the implied volatility was hard on it. So when Snap did such a good job on it and even beat the implied move, we only saw 131%. Meta doesn't price it in, but it's sympathy. So when Snap moves, Meta's going to want to move, right? That's sympathy play. So we see these near 1,000 baggers on Meta going on, right? We want to look at something else called the IV crush. If you buy a contract, I'm just going to go ahead and pull up the BBBY one again. I like using this for just referencing. You know, the implied volatility is 457%. That's insane. Exactly. So when we're seeing such a high implied volatility on a stock, and let's say the stock doesn't perform well, right? The stock is against your favor or it doesn't meet the implied move, you're going to lose money on these contracts, right? Now, the only reason why the IV is so high and I make money on these contracts is because the implied move is A, greater than it, or B, I'm riding the implied move. I'm riding the implied volatility in this one. I didn't even know this was that one. Perfect example of playing the IV pump, right? The implied volatility is up insane, 457%, but because I bought it in so early, I'm netting 562% on the contract. Because not only is BBBY doing good, but I'm also riding the implied volatility on this one. So that's the IV pump. I sold this one right before the market closed. I didn't even swing this, right? So the implied, I'm playing the IV. I'm playing the implied volatility mostly. That's what's making me my gain. But anyways, let's say the implied move on BBBY or Meta or Snap or Nike doesn't happen. Let's say it's implying a 10 to 20% move, but it only moves 5 to 6%. Well, you're going to lose money on these contracts because it's already priced in a 10 to 20% move. So when it only moves 6 and the IV resets, you're down money now. The contract's worthless. The contract's not worth shit because it's not expecting a move to happen. What ends up happening is your delta on these contracts go down. The delta is delta is the factor is a Greek on the option that says how likely an option is to go in the money, right? So if the delta is 1, that means it's in the money or it's going to be in the money. If a delta is -1, that means it's never going to be in the money. It's super unlikely out of the money, right? So far out, the stock would have to crash, right? So riding the delta from 0 to 1 is pretty great. You know, I always say, let the Greeks do the work for you. So that's one thing you guys should know. If the implied volatility, is high and the stock doesn't move as much, your delta resets, the IV resets, a bunch of time decay will kill you. So the contracts become worthless. It could turn an $8 contract into a $2 contract just instantly. So definitely be wary of the IV crush, right? And I like to use the IV crush in my advantage. I like to short contracts in this event. So example, shorting is when you sell something that you don't already own and you agree to buy it back later. What that means is that, let's say I think BBBY is great, is going to go good. Well, puts are still increasing in value because of this IV pump. People are expecting a move on BBBY. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to buy puts on it. I'm going to sell puts because I still think the stock's going to go up. So when the stock goes up and let's say it does or doesn't beat the implied move, I can short my puts and I'll buy them back later for cheaper. I can do the same thing with calls. Let's say this random stock is moving insane, right? Let's say PKD, for example. PKD has the IV of 457%, right? But there's no news on PKD. There's no reason PKD should be this high, this expensive. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fucking short PKD calls or puts. Because if it only moves 1%, 2%, the contract's reset. And now suddenly, all those contracts that I just shorted are worth shit. I buy them back and I pocket the difference. So, IV Crush, it's a really good time to short contracts, but be safe about it. Make sure you're right. If you think, BBBY is going to do good, I would short puts, right? And even if BBBY doesn't move as big as the implied volatility was, right? You're still making money because the implied volatility will kill you, and the fact that BBBY went up will also kill the puts. So that's a great time to short contracts, in my opinion. Is just on the IV crush. The IV flush is when you play it the day after, right? So for example, if Snap is let's say Snap has good earnings, right? So pull up Snap. Snap had good earnings, and so because Snap had good earnings, this wick up right here, I'm gonna go ahead and buy my calls, right? Because all the premiums have reset. There's new pricing into it. there's no longer the I implied volatility on it. So I'm gonna play calls, 1 to 3 minutes after open, and Snap actually rode the rest of the day. The rest of the day, Snap just kept going up. It actually went up another, I think 1.5%, which was still good. I could play Snap calls all day on that stock, right? So Snap moved. Oh look, I didn't realize. I should have cropped that out. Anyways, Snap rose the rest of the day. Snap rose the rest of the day, and you can play the flush on the IV because all the contracts are reset. Everyone knows Snap is good. Now I can just play with free money, and everyone's pumping up Snap the rest of that day because it was so good, right? I didn't even have to play earnings to make money on Snap earnings. That's very funny. The next day I could play it, and because everyone knows it's so good, everyone wants to buy in. Same thing happens with Meta because everyone knew, and that's why even like after earnings, the implied volatility on Meta was just insanely good. Everyone kept buying Meta. This contract rode to almost 900%, 800%. So because, although I wouldn't make such a massive gain playing the flush on it, which don't get me wrong, there's still plenty of time to make good money on flush. You can make even 1,000% on the flush alone, right? But because the flush was so strong, it took a contract that was already up 700% and rode it almost to the 1,000 by itself, the flush. So that's an extra 300% that you could have made on your money if you just played the fucking flush. So I'm just saying, there's 3 ways to make earnings: is the pump, the crush, and the flush. Best 3 ways. Because the crush is going to happen to, if not both, but one of the contracts, right? Let's say Nike does really good. The crush is going to happen on puts. The implied volatility is still going to chip away at Nike calls, right? Now, if Nike beats the implied volatility, which I think it will because there's so much volume going to come into Nike stocks, then, good for you. I'm gonna swing Nike calls if there's enough volume, right? Like I have no shame in doing that. I'll do it. But I'm also gonna be looking at Walmart. I'm gonna look at other consumer stocks. So that's not the only thing I'm gonna be looking at. Now I do want to also note about the sector rotations. So I'm gonna bring this image up here. Sorry for all my sniffling. Right? I want to talk about the sector rotation because consumer spending or consumer staples right here, it's leading right now. This is going to tell us if consumer, what is it called? XLP. Yeah, it came back. So consumer spending is how much money people are actually spending in the market. So for example, it'd be like you going to buy stuff at Nike or you buying stuff at Walmart, Toys R Us, whatever it is. Our RIP Toys R Us, first of all. So this shows how much money people are spending outside of bills, utilities, and whatever. How much money is actually being transacted on a given basis. You going to the store, buying bread, buying food, whatever. So that is consumer spending. Nike's going to tell us how well consumer spending is going to go. If consumer spending is crap, this could have a major effect on our economy, because suddenly there's less faith in it. We unfortunately we would ride puts. I don't like playing puts on the SPY because, well, you're betting against America at that point, but it's just something you got to do. I'd rather my money be worth something later than nothing. So Nike's going to be very important coming up to this week. There's going to be a lot of volume spikes on Nike. We might play them, we might not. It depends if I have time or if I can get in time. But what's also going to be important is following the flow. Now, recently, Google has a lot of put flow on it. So I'm not very comfortable with the tech sector coming in. I know the tech sector is falling. So if we actually look, what is the tech sector right now? Technology sector, it's actually coming back to improving. Still down 3.6%, it's not going to look good. I think what's going to happen with the tech sector is going to go back to lagging. So, or it's probably going to go straight diagonal into the weakening side. Whatever the case may be, I definitely think tech is going to look very bad this upcoming week as well, just from the flow alone. Once again, it could be one of those situations where everything looks right, but something crazy happens. So definitely be careful with what's going to happen on that side of things. So, but yeah, this is enough about me ranting. I definitely think you guys should be safe when playing Nike earnings, and I definitely think you guys should be safe and do your own research. However, this is what I'm looking at. I always say the best way to make money on market opens is the night before. So I'm doing my research. This is what I came up with for the most part. I kind of know where I'm gonna play on Monday through Friday. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. It was a video covering the Ivy Pump, Flush, and Crush. So yeah, hope you guys all had a good one, and I'll see you next time. DM me if you have any questions. I'm always available. So hope you guys enjoyed.